Father, thank you so much for this night to gather with other believers and to talk about how we can advance your kingdom through our writings. And I pray, God, that you would give us a great wisdom as we go through. Lord, help us through and the people that are facing storms tonight. And I'm sure there are storms physically as well as emotionally, Lord, but for the physical ones right now going through this area, I pray, God, for your protection and just continue to keep us safe too. Lord, I pray that you'd really speak to each one of us. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
Amen. Great. All right. Well, tonight, the topic is finding your audience. Finding your audience. We've done 6 of these writers groups already where we've looked at what to write, why do we write, how to get started, how to lay out your interior, how to design your cover, how to upload it to Amazon and other things. So as we're moving into the second half of the year, these next 6 meetings, we're looking a little more at marketing and publishing and how you're going to launch your book and things like that. So we're going to keep going through that. If you've missed some of the earlier ones, you can go back and watch them. And if you want to stick with us, we do it every third Wednesday. So I'm glad you're all here. I'm just going to start with a brief little introduction about how I found some of my own audience, and then Kent Sanders is going to share a little bit about podcasting and other ways that he's been able to find his audience. And Mary Felkins will join us in a little bit, and she's going to talk just about how she uses social media and other things to get the word out about her books. And so a lot of this is sort of just how do you reach the people with your material. And so for me, I started an internet ministry 25 years ago, and so from my beginnings, I was always trying to reach out to people online. But I also had a paper mailing list at the time, and I just started writing weekly devotional articles, and I wondered how to get them out to people. And so I started a mailing list of just people that, friends and family that I thought might be interested. And back then, I didn't ask permission for the very first ones. I just started mailing them out and said, "Hey, if you'd like to hear from me," it was sort of. I mean, I wasn't going to keep mailing them if they didn't want it, but I sent the first one saying, "If you'd like to hear from me, I'm going to be writing each week about spiritual things, and I'd love to have you follow along with me." And so that grew into I probably had 500 physical mailings that I went out once a month, and then online I did once a week to people online, and that grew over the first few years to 500 or 1,000 people. And it was just a way to get the word out that, hey, I'm writing. I wasn't actually publishing books at the time. I wasn't doing anything else. I just wanted to share spiritual truths, and so I just started my writing, and I started sharing them with people. And then as time went on, I partnered with a man that I met at a internet evangelism conference down in Florida, and he sat by me at a table, and he did this daily Christian quote. So he would have a Christian quote from C.S. Lewis or any different Christian author, plus a Christian Bible verse. And he wanted help with his website and with his mailing list, and so I said I'd help him. And so I helped him grow his mailing list, and so he sent out a daily quote. He'd just been collecting these over the years, and so he sent out a quote a day. This was back in the year 2000. And then on the weekends, he started adding in a weekly sermon. He'd just find a sermon online that someone had written, and he'd post it. And at one point I said, I'm writing these weekly devotionals. Would you ever want one? And he said, I'd love them. I'd love them all. And so I started sharing my weekly message on his list. And this is where partnership can come in really handy, because I had about 1,000 on my list, but we had grown his to about 10,000 email subscribers. So he had about 10,000 people. So now I was reaching my 1,000 plus his 10,000. And then we eventually grew his list to 40,000 people in 160 countries. And so we were reaching people all over the world on a regular basis, and every day with the push of a button on the computer, sending it out to quite a lot of people. But it really just started with both of us, trying to reach out. He reached out to friends and family, and I did too. And we said, hey, we're starting this list, and we eventually merged the list together. His is called This Day's Thought, and you can sign up at thisdaysthought.org and get his daily Christian quotes and Bible verses, and they're still wonderful 20 years later, unbelievably. We eventually split off just because we both had different organizations. I still help him with his website, and I still do a lot. But I've gone off instead of just writing every week. I'm doing some other things now, and so I've kept half of the mailing list, and he's kept half. So I'm reaching about 20,000 people now, as well as he is, and that's just over the years. Things, email changes and things. But that's really helped me, and that's my primary audience. So even my books, as I publish them or upload them to Amazon, it's usually after the fact. I've been writing for 20 or 30 weeks, a devotional series, and then when I get to the end, I publish it. I upload it to Amazon, and I say, hey, if you want a paperback copy of all the things you've been reading, you can order one. But I've already been sending it every week to these tens of thousands of people. And so that's very fulfilling to me. So it's not really about book sales, or it's about getting my message out to people. So I share that story because I don't know, what type of writing you're trying to do, what your goal is. If you're trying to make money, this isn't the way to do it. It costs me money every month to send out to 20,000 people. It costs me a fair amount of money to reach that many people. But I consider myself a missionary, and I raise support to do this, and so I reach out to a lot of people. And then I give it away for free because that's part of my mission support. And then if I make money on the books, that's on the back end, and that's a blessing, but that's not my goal. So if your goal is to make money, don't give it all away for free. I would say, you want to do something different. But still, even if my books, I've had my books in, I have one of my books at Barnes and Noble just here in town, just as a local author, and they have 5 copies, and it's been a year and a half, and they still have 5 copies of my book. The same 5 copies have just sat on the shelf at that bookstore. So if I waited for a bookstore to sell my books, or if I waited for a publisher, I've tried different publishing deals, and they've all fallen through. So over 20 years of writing, I still haven't found a publisher. I still haven't found a bookstore that will push my stuff as well as I can push it myself. So just by having a mailing list, or having a Facebook account, or having a Twitter, or a Instagram account, you can get your writing out to people so much better just directly. And so this would be my encouragement to you. And I can talk later in the hour about how I technically do the mailing list, because I hire a company to do it, because you can't just send 20,000 emails from your account, or you get shut down. So and it would take you, 2 days to get all 20,000 mailed out. It just takes a long time for that. So there are companies that you can go to, like MailChimp, or Aweber, or ConvertKit, or Constant Contact, or Campaign Monitor. I can go through some of these ideas with you, and you can sign up for some of them for free, and you could have like 500 people on your mailing list, and every time you push a button, it goes out to all those people. But the main idea is, is it's sort of up to you. I mean, who do you know that would be interested in your writing? And Clayton is great at this. He orders 200 copies of his book, and then he gives it out at his men's group, and he gives it to his family, and he gives it to his grandkids, and he gives it out to anybody he thinks that would be interested, and he has a lot of connections that way. And so there's lots of ways to get your material out there, but you're going to have to really believe in your stuff, and you have to believe this is going to help someone, and then you just go for it, and you say, I want to reach people, so let me start with the people I know. There's not a secret magic thing how to reach 1 million people in one email blast. It just doesn't happen. It really is a friend. Who are your friends? Who are your family? How do you start somewhere and get your information out to people? So that's my little intro spiel about finding your audience. One more quote from J.K. Rowling, who wrote the Harry Potter series, and she just talks about how I can't remember the specific number, 11 publishers or something turned her down for that series when she had the first book. And this is a common thing you'll hear. And she just says, it's a matter of finding your right audience. At one point, the head of Scholastic, he didn't even care for the book, but he gave it to his granddaughter, and she read it, and she loved it, and came back and said, I really love this book. So he decided to, push it with his management, and they carried it, and then it became the Harry Potter series around the world. But she had to find that one little girl that really cared about this Harry Potter kid in her book. So it takes a while to find your audience. It's not magic. It's not simple. But J.K. Rowling would even said it doesn't mean that your writing isn't good. It doesn't mean that people wouldn't love it. It just means you haven't found your audience yet. So I just encourage you, try to find your audience. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Kent Sanders, who can share a little about how he's been taking great stabs and finding his audience. Kent? And if you want to share just a little about who you are and what you do too, that's great, Kent. Some people may not have known you yet.
Sure. So my name is Kent Sanders. By day, I am a college teacher. I teach at a small college in North St. Louis and have been there for like 16 years or something like that. And I started off actually as a worship pastor. Then I transitioned into teaching courses and stuff related to worship ministry. Then I transitioned into more communications a few years ago. So I've always had a heart for ministry. And in fact, that's how I got to know Eric. But it has been really an interesting journey the last few years as I have gotten more into learning about business and entrepreneurship and those kinds of things. And I feel like I sort of have a very small flicker of knowing what I'm doing these days. I'm further along than I was, but it's like you move an inch and you still see that you have a mile to go. But I think that's what all of us feel like many times in this writing journey and so forth. So that's what I do by day. I'm not sure why I said by day. It's not like I'm Batman out there cruising the streets of St. Louis, saving people and that kind of a thing. But I guess that is the truth. By afternoon, late afternoon and evening, I am a ghostwriter, and I write business books, personal development books, things like that. I just, in fact, this week I have to write the final chapters for a client book, and then I'm starting another one in a couple of weeks for another client. So that's been actually really an unexpectedly fun thing. I got into ghostwriting just because I was really looking for a niche to focus on. But the fascinating thing is I have really, really enjoyed it a lot in a way that was totally unexpected and that I wasn't prepared for. That's a whole nother conversation. But I do ghostwriting for clients, and I also write my own stuff, and I also host a podcast called Smart Business Writing. So the way that I initially just got my writing out there starting a few years ago was I just started a blog. And I've had probably 3 or 4 different websites over the years. I don't even remember what the first one was called, but I just started putting up blog posts and putting stuff out there. And my audience has never been massive or anything like that, but I have found that being consistent with your writing and then sharing it with people in whatever ways that you can, that to me has been the number one thing that's been really helpful. Not necessarily growing a big, huge audience. Like I've always been jealous of Eric's ability to have like a massive audience. I've never had that. I'm only slightly jealous, maybe a little bit. We're good friends, so I can say that, I guess, publicly.
You can say it. That's totally fine.
Okay, I can say it.
But actually,
So
I love Kent's. Kent, when he interacts on Facebook with people, he gets 70 or 80 comments on anything that he posts. He'll post something, and just the people just engage with him and interact with him, and I think that's a really huge part of his style and what he can draw out of people. And I'll post something, and 2 or 3 people will interact with me. So I've just always been impressed with Kent's ability to ask the right questions and to really engage with people. And maybe you're going to talk about this, Kent, but I really love it also as a way to get people involved and invested in your writing projects. So.
yeah, so I've never had a big email list. I've never had a big audience or anything like that. But I would say the one thing that has helped me more than anything else, well, I would say there's 2 things. Number one is I've tried to take advantage of the opportunities right in front of me. I try to say yes to things that sound interesting without overwhelming myself. And I'll give you an example. So a few years ago, I started getting more serious about writing for other publications. And I knew that I needed to start writing for places that were not just my own website or my own blog. So one of the places that I started writing for was this website called the Good Men Project. And most of you have probably never heard of this site. They get millions of visitors per month. It's a big, huge media site. I had never heard of it until a few years ago, to be honest with you. But somehow I got connected with them and I started submitting articles. And then over a period of a few months, I started writing for them quite a bit and then became one of their editors. which was a really good experience. And that was just an opportunity that was right in front of me. I didn't really know what I was doing, but I got involved with the people there and learned a ton from their head editors and their owners and so forth. And that opportunity led to other opportunities. So I think that's a really important principle of seeing what do you have right in front of you. It may not be the exact ideal thing that you're looking for. It may not be the final goal, but do you have something literally right in front of you that you can do, where you can write for something, you can help someone with content or with your writing, you can give some content away. And I love Clayton's emphasis on giving away books. I've given away a lot of my books over the years, and I find a lot of joy in that. Just giving books away. Now I like to make money selling books, of course, as well, but I think there is a lot of value in giving away books to people, especially if you have a print version of your book, because when you give people a print version, that is something that will sit on their desk. It'll sit on their table or the dresser or whatever. They may carry it around with them different places. I look at a book as kind of like your ambassador. You know, it's got your name on it. If you have a good cover, it's just going to go places that you will never be able to go. In fact, I've got a friend who she's kind of sneaky. She's been very successful with self-publishing, and she actually takes copies of some of her books, and whenever she's at a hair place or a doctor or getting her oil changed or something like that, she just leaves copies of her book there, kind of among the magazines. And I think that's kind of a cool idea.
That
So
is a
you
great
never know
idea.
what
I love that.
opportunities
I
are going
think
to be.
that's really good. I
I
think
know,
you
I
can
love
find
that.
an audience wherever you can want to find it. That's great.
And I think the
That's
main idea
brilliant.
there is that so much of the time we're looking for that golden opportunity that, man, I want to write for the New York Times, or I want to write for entrepreneur.com, or I want to do this big important thing. But those kind of things don't happen until we do a bunch of the little things first. And in fact, I'll tell you this quick story, then I'll tell you the other thing that's been helpful to me. So my very first ghostwriting client came to me in a really strange way. You know, many times as writers, we like to do the big things. We want to go speak on big stages. We want to have 1 million people read our stuff. And we all want the big things. But a friend of mine invited me to speak at a little writing workshop that she had put together. This has been a couple years ago. It was in, I even forget where it was, somewhere in Northern Illinois. I used to live in Northern Illinois, and this girl was part of the youth group at the church where I used to work. So, and that had, some years had passed, and she was working in a library in this small town in Northern Illinois. She was really interested in writing. So she put together this workshop, and I drove like 3 hours to go do a workshop, to do a presentation at this workshop. And I went, and there was, including me and her and everybody else, there was, I think, 7 people there. So I had drove all this way, and initially my heart sunk a little bit. I'm kind of embarrassed to admit that. But we've all had that experience where you go somewhere and you're kind of expecting a bigger crowd, and it's just these handful of people. But I thoroughly enjoyed it, and I absolutely loved just being there with those people. And I met a lady there who's a teacher. I have a soft spot for teachers. Teachers are awesome. Particularly public school teachers right now who are just dealing with so much. So met this lady who is a part-time writer and a school teacher, math teacher, in fact. And we got to be kind of friends. And a few months later, she knew that I was getting into ghostwriting, and she said, hey, I have this friend who is looking for a ghostwriter to help tell her story. So anyway, that's how I got my first client, through just saying yes to this really, really small opportunity. And I think there's a good principle there of just saying yes to whatever's right in front of you. And one thing that's in front of all of us is social media. You can be posting on social media all the time. You can post your own stuff, but I think honestly what is more important is to share other people's stuff. So like if you see a friend who has a good post, or they put up a good article or something, maybe they have a podcast or a book or an article or a blog post, you can share that on Facebook or LinkedIn or Twitter or wherever you're active. I think that's actually more important than sharing your own stuff all the time. In fact, I think if you only share your own stuff, people just get the impression like you're just tooting your own horn all the time. So, you know, whenever you share other people's stuff, they love that. It establishes goodwill with them. It kind of makes you, and if you do that enough, it makes you kind of like a little bit of a hub for your network. And then people start to associate you with them feeling good. So that leads into the second thing that I've tried to do that has been really helpful, which is just being really strategic about building relationships and networking and sharing people's stuff. And that's honestly why I do a podcast. A big reason why I do it is so I can have a place where I can invite people. We can have conversations about writing or business or whatever the topic is. And that to me has been my number one tool for just building relationships, is just having a podcast. Some of you are probably not interested in that because a podcast is a lot of work. There's a lot of time and effort involved in it. But for me, it's been really, really worthwhile, and something that has been hugely helpful for me just in making friendships and building connections and things like that. So
Kent, I think about your comment of promoting other people's things too, and just your engagement on social media. Also, I think, you don't just talk about your own stuff. I think that's just a really key thing. You really talk about a whole variety of things, interesting things, all kinds of topics, and things that you know about, things that you're aware about, and I think people just like following you, as a person. And Kent and I talk every week, and so we've talked about this a number of times, that it's not even sometimes about the topic that you're the expert in that topic, but although we are experts in certain topics, and we all are in certain topics, but people start to gravitate towards you specifically, and whatever you want to talk about, we want to hear about, like in your podcast. And but I think that also just that sharing about other people's things, and I won't call it, well, I will call it enlightened self-interest.
yeah,
It's
yeah,
self-interest still, but it's enlightened self-interest, because you're sharing about a lot of things that will help people, but in a lot of ways it comes back to you. That still sounds a little selfish, but I think there's a certain amount of, I think it's less forward and less annoying to people, rather than promoting me all the time. It's like, what can I do to help you? How can I help you? And Clayton, again, is great. He's the master of this. He doesn't just give away his book. He has given away thousands, tens of thousands of books over the years. He picks them up at garage sales. He picks them up at used book sales. How many? I don't know, Clayton. How many books you've collected?
I don't keep track.
Well, and your birthday's coming up.
Yeah, we'll
Five
talk
more.
about that off deal here.
Yeah, but 5 more days he'll be 89, and so he's given away a lot of thousands of books over the years, and he's just a master at reaching people. So when he gives his own book and slips it in there amongst the rest, that's no big deal for him, because it just doesn't seem.
Try to get men to read books. So that's a tough one. If you're writing a book, its chances are that men aren't going to read it because they don't read books. They give it up for Lent, you know.
For a
They give it up
lifetime,
for
a
something.
lifetime of Lent. Yeah, a lifetime of Lent.
So I try to get men to read books. That's one of the toughest things a person could ever do.
And so just turning that to each of you that are watching this right now or watching it later, how can you add value to the people in your life? What can you do to help them? And it may be your own stuff, but maybe it's something else. I've written on several different topics on human sexuality and things that are very specific. But I frequently will recommend 4 or 5 books in addition to mine. I'll say, oh, I think
Yeah,
this book is great for you. This book is great for you. I've written a book on it too, if you want my book. But
yeah,
I think it's always just throwing it in the mix. How can you help the person?
that's
And
right.
it's not, you don't always have the best resource for them. And just if you can keep at the front of your mind, what can I offer them that can help them?
We're a cheerleader for people,
Yeah, yeah,
cheerleading them, and books just happen to be a category that we talk about.
yeah, yeah. So I think if you can mix yours in with it. I used to teach a seminar for a company called National Seminars, and
I
I would
didn't know
travel
that.
around with other people for a year. I traveled around with other people, and we talk about different topics. It didn't matter. It was either on conflict resolution, or it was on networking, or it was computers, or it was on how to use PowerPoint or something. But they also had a book table that we were to promote the books on the book table, and they always taught us. They said, right before break, always mention the book table, and always mention 3 or 4 books that you really love, that are personal books that are favorites of yours, not the books we're selling, but just some book that hey, this is one of the best books on conflict resolution. This is a great book. You want to get this. And this is a great book. We happen to have it here at the table, if you want that book, but you're trying to provide value to people, but it was definitely ingrained in us as speakers to talk about the things that we love, the things that were helpful to us. And then, by the way, we have a book table with some of these resources here. And you do that right before break, and you put some candies on the table so people mill around and look at the books, and you made half your money through the sales of the books as well. I didn't do very well on the book table part of it because I just felt like, no, they're telling me how to manipulate people. I don't want to do that. But over the years, I've just seen you're not trying to manipulate people. You're trying to give people resources that really help them. And when I can convince myself of that my book on human sexuality is going to really help people, then it helps me be a better salesman for my own product, because I say, wow, there are 3 or 4 other books that could really help you, and mine is one of them. But why don't you get your hands on this? This is going to be great. You're really going to want to read this. And anyway, Kent, I took off from some of your points there, but
I want to jump in real quick and just say, that's right. Your book on sexuality is phenomenal.
oh, well, thanks. From a satisfied customer who I didn't pay to do that endorsement, but yeah.
Kent, this is Michelle. Can I ask a question?
Of course. I'll try to give an intelligent answer.
I'm sure that you will. So you mentioned podcasts, and I don't know if you're going to go into this, but I'm wondering if you have any recommendations on where to get the logistics and technology information to do a podcast.
Sure. There's a couple things. Number one is if you I don't know what the link to this is. Are you familiar with a guy named Pat Flynn from Smart Passive Income?
The name is familiar, but I'm not really familiar.
Okay. If you just Google Pat Flynn, Flynn.
Okay.
Free podcasting course. He has a free podcasting course. That's how I learned to do podcasting several years ago.
Okay.
It's very detailed. It's very, very good. At least I'm 90% sure he still has a free course out there. If that one, if for some reason you can't find that one, there's another one. It's by a guy named John Lee Dumas. He's the host of the Entrepreneur on Fire podcast. He has now this is kind of a very meta thing. He has a podcast on starting a podcast. It's a free 10 episodes. It's really ingenious, actually, the way that he did it. It's just a podcast on here's how you actually start a podcast. Really, it's pretty simple, though. I'm sorry, what's that?
What was his last name again?
It's Dumas, Dumas, John Lee Dumas.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yeah, and if you run into, I would say check those out. I mean, you can just get in touch with me, and I'm happy to walk you through stuff. It's really, once you do it, it's really not that difficult. You don't need that much stuff to do it at a basic level.
Kent, what's the company that you use when you do your podcast? You put it all in one place, Libsyn or something. How do you spell that?
Yeah, it's Libsyn. It's a shortened version of Liberated Syndication, and it's Libsyn. That is a podcast hosting company. It's kind of like YouTube for podcasters, except YouTube is free. Well, it's not free if you pay for it, but Libsyn I think I pay $15 a month for hosting, which is pretty cheap.
And so Kent records his podcast, and then he uploads it there, and they distribute it out to Apple and iTunes and Spotify, and I don't remember what are all the places it goes to, even, Kent?
Mine goes to Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Pandora, pretty much everywhere else. Because a lot of those places draw from Apple.
So it's an audio podcast, and he just uploads it to that one company, and then they distribute it everywhere.
Now, there's another strategy if you like podcasting. Something that is probably going to be more effective in the short term is if instead of having your own show, you pitch yourself as a guest to other podcasters. So I get these emails sometimes. It's an extremely common thing where, let's say if Eric wanted to be on more podcasts, you would just identify podcasts that you think your topic would fit into, and then you would email those podcasters and basically just say, hey, I really love your show. Here's my topic. I can talk about these 3 or 4 things within the realm of that topic. Here's how I can add value to your audience, blah, blah, blah. And many times they'll say yes. If a guest sends me an email and it's a well-written email and it's clear they know what my show is about, probably I'll say yes. More than likely if it seems like it's a good match. So the advantage of doing things that way is that you don't have to run your own podcast. You get all the benefits of podcasting without all the work and the expense, which is kind of a cool deal.
And Kent
That
and I
being
both.
said, though, I love podcasting myself, which is why I put the time and effort into creating my own show.
And Kent, one of the reasons he's told me why he does a podcast is he just wants to meet these interesting people. And so he does this interview show, and so he'll sometimes just do a solo show where it's just him talking about a topic, but a lot of the times you'll be interviewing various famous people or not famous people or just people
Infamous,
that you find are interesting, and you've just enjoyed just the process of getting to know these people. But those things have also led to book projects and ghostwriting projects for you. And so I think just
Yep,
by
they have.
it's one way to network, and you start your podcast, and I've just started one this year on YouTube, and I'm not doing the Libsyn and all the. I don't go to Apple iTunes or anything. I just do a YouTube channel, and I've just been recording interviews with some of my interesting friends, and so I recorded one with Mary Falcons, for instance, who's going to speak in just a minute. And so you can go to ericelder.com and you can go scroll through my Using Your Gifts with Eric Elder and Friends, and you'll see Mary Falcon's interview. In 40 minutes or so, we talked about her book project and her writing and how she writes, and gave a few plugs for her new book called To Love. And so it's a great way, and it's interesting. It's interesting to me. It's fun for me. Kent just interviewed me for a podcast of his that he was doing on making a musical, because I've just finished writing a musical. And so you can go to ericelder.com, and I've posted it on my podcast, and he's going to post it on his, to all his places. And he interviewed me for this, and I talk about my new musical. His name was Nicholas, and but it's easy to start a YouTube channel. You just click go live, and you just log into YouTube using your email address, and it's free, and you just say go live, and you just start talking to the camera, and you've got a new podcast. And you can do those. I did it every night during the beginning of COVID for 50 nights. I did a bedtime stories of faith, and this is what I did for my book. I took my new book that I just finished called My Stories of Faith, and I just said, I'd love to get this out to people, and I want to get it out during this crisis time, because people need more stories of faith, how you're going to get through this. And so I just read every night from that book, and I just would read a chapter, I'd talk about it afterwards, I'd pray for people. And I'd play a song on the piano. I'm a musician too, so I just tell a story, pray for people, and play a song. And that was the whole podcast, and I did that for 50 nights straight. Now I've started a new one about this book that Kent and I talked about called His Name Was Nicholas. And you can go to ericelder.com and you can see that. It's 25 Days of Christmas. We're doing Christmas in July. And so even tonight at 10 o'clock, I'll do it live for half an hour, and I'm just reading from the book, and I'm playing a song from the show. So I read the script, I read all the characters myself, and I read the script, I play a song, I pray for people.
That's wonderful.
And it's just a great way to, pull out the book and say, hey, this is the book I just finished. I'd love to read it to you. If you want a copy, here's a link, and you can go get on Amazon, and we'll talk about this in a few months, but I'll just give you a preview here. On Amazon, I make $5 per copy. But since I run a ministry, and you could do this even just as a donation to your own efforts, but I say, if you want to make a donation to me, so that I can help write more things like this, if you want to make a $25 donation, I'll send you this as a thank you gift. I'll send you the book as a thank you gift. And last night I had an order for my book, $25. Someone clicked, and it's cost me $3.50 plus another $3 of shipping. So rather than $5, I'm making 20 some dollars, almost $20 on the sale of that book, by just having it on my website, selling it straight from my website. What I do is, behind the scenes, I just go onto Amazon and I say, I'd like to order an author copy at my author rate, and could you ship it to this person? and then they let me order for my rate and have it shipped across the country or around the world. I don't even touch the book. I don't print the book. I don't get envelopes for the book. I just log in behind the scenes on Amazon. I get my rate, and they're okay with this. This is not a shady thing. They're okay with this because they make money on every sale, but I make the larger profit margin. And I tell people too that recently I've never done this, but I've wanted to do this. But I'll say, if you want to make $100 donation, I will inscribe this book to anyone that you want, and I'll ship it anywhere in the world. And so then I just have Amazon ship me a copy for Amazon Prime. I pay the full rate of $12 or whatever, get it in 2 or 3 days. I inscribe it, and then I mail it out from my house to someone. But I've just made $100, not quite that profit, but I mean 90 some dollars on that book, rather than sending everybody to Amazon, and Amazon takes a cut of the net profit and everything. If I'm the one selling it, I'm promoting it. I think it's good that you can make the money on it. So, and I've had 2 orders of people that wanted signed copies, and were willing to donate $100 to our ministry to do that. So, I think you could do that even not as a ministry. You could do it as, hey, this is my business. I'm trying to grow it, and anything you promote. You won't get a tax refund, but I know you're not doing this for the tax refund anyway. I know you to do it because you love me. So you just say that to people, and people will can still do that. So anyway, I want to get to Mary Felkins though before we get done with this first hour. And so I've invited Mary too, and you can find her at Mary Felkins, Felkins, maryfelkins.com. And Mary, I just asked if you could share a few things, because you are really becoming a master, from everything I see, of posting on Facebook and keeping people updated on your latest projects. And you keep bringing up your book that you've been selling now for a while, but you have different angles, different approaches. How do you find your audience, Mary Felkins?
Well, I was kind of looking back at the 3 areas. First of all, I'm glad you answered the question about what if somebody wants a signed copy, because that's usually where I run into problems, is if somebody just wants a copy, they can get it, but they want it signed. So that was helpful. You were talking about these 4 particular areas. You're talking about email, social media, and personal networking. And of course, I'm thankful Kent has already covered podcasts, because that's not something I feel comfortable with, but other than being on the opposite end with the interview we did, that was so much fun. But I know that email is a huge thing. Like with social media, I'm very much a fan of how that is a location to find readers. And but then social media can change. As you know, people are griping about this rule changed, and Facebook won't let you post certain things. There's a lot of limitations, or it could go away any day. And so but with email, you do want to draw people that way, and eventually to your website too. So I know that there's just a lot of talk about building up your email list, and that's something that I don't work aggressively on that, but I'm aware that that's important to do that. And then so what I do is, when I started my blog, I thought, what, this is before I had a book published, and so my content was devotions. So I thought, how frequently can I realistically publish something, when it came down to being once a week. Initially it was once a month, and then switched to just once a week, but also added a quarterly author newsletter. So I feel like having a newsletter is really important. And with Eric, there are things when I open my email, things that I don't have any interest in, and things that I'm excited to look at and to click and open. And so if you can offer really good content with the email, whether it's a devotion or information, and very, very clear links, that's really important, so that people want to have you show up in their inbox, because I have a whole flood of information and is too much. And so email is important. And then keeping it, brief and visually appealing, and again, very user friendly. And Eric, you just really do an outstanding job of that. It's a little bit like Christmas presents, and a lot of them email I don't like, but when I get to certain ones, I'm excited and interested in what's there. But for social media, I feel it, like it or not, it's like a love-hate relationship with me. I try to be, again, very disciplined where my creative time is in the morning, but I have to connect with people as well, and that's where readers are. And so I feel like that's important to be present and to try to be consistent, and also to limit. I mean, there are a lot of accounts, and so I try to limit to Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter, which I don't like a whole lot, but there are readers out there as well. And it's also where people can share readily. And so, and it's important to have a presence. If you're spread too thin, just like having a lot of children, it's hard to give quality attention to all of them. So it's recommended really just to have 2, maybe 3 tops. On my website, it does include Pinterest as well, and I do have storyboards there, but I'm not real active. I'll pop in maybe every couple of months and kind of clean up and see if there's any activity. But the thing to remember with social media is, and as a believer too, there's so much about numbers, and it's easy to forget these are individuals. And when I have connected with readers and sent a private message and tried to really truly think of them as a person, as I want to be considered a person, then that really changes. I've learned a lot about people and what their struggles are, what their interests are. And so it's very humbling just to kind of get away from the building numbers and realize we are all, those numbers represent people made in the image of God.
Mary, I really love that. I just want to highlight that again too, because just you're really good about this, and I think just being able to focus on the people. And I know some other, in the New York Times best-selling authors like Debbie Macomber and others, they go way out of their way to say, "Hey, write to me. I would love to hear from you, and I want to hear your story. I want to," and she interacts with so many people because she just cares about people. And she's a fiction writer, and I mean, she writes romance novels, but she cares about people's hearts. And I just think that's really a key thing that you're saying, Mary. It's because if it's all one way, it's all about, it's all about me, 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 and my books. That doesn't connect with readers. If you want to connect with readers, and then truly connect with them, truly love them, and they will love you back. So again, I wish there was a better word than enlightened self-interest. I think it's just love. It's genuine love, genuine care for people, and care for people's hearts. And that shows.
Yeah, and then as I would respond in the same way with other authors or people, is I want to promote them. So that works in my favor, kind of through the back door, is somebody that I've taken the time to get to know or shared a common interest in, fox terriers or Donny Osmond idols, whatever, some of these other things that is not all about books, but there are other aspects to my life as well, then people will respond favorably. And we all have people in our life that we kind of have maybe some negative feelings toward, and depending on how they interacted with us, and then the opposite is also true. And everybody now is so sensitive. It's hard to be on social media because I feel like I'm walking in just this landmine of negativity. And so it's also a place to, yes, talk about your writing, but keep it lighthearted, or just try to stay away from the arguments and the division, and to contribute positive and fun and lighthearted things.
Do you have an actual goal of like how many times you post on social media about yourself or your books, or I can't remember if you said you had a certain number of times a month, and then you mix it in with family things or other things, because it's not all about your books. But
yeah, there's generally a rule to try, and I don't know that I do this real well, but I'm aware of it, to try to promote other people, other things, other events more than your own work. And then I do keep an alarm on my phone for that. Wednesday's a little bit more of my heavier promoting, to say, okay, have a book image and a quote or something ready on that day, just to kind of keep stirring the pot a little bit. But also in between that is to make sure I've drawn attention to other writers or other circumstances, just Sometimes I've done my devotion and I feel so compelled, like it's Monday morning and I'm supposed to be really focused on writing, but I just need to share this on Instagram. I really feel like God is asking me to share that. And so that is a way to connect with people and avoid a pulpit holier than thou approach, just to try to throw myself in there that I'm part of this struggle to try to live right as well, but maintaining gratitude. So just to prioritize it and put it, literally schedule it, and then allow the Spirit to lead you to add in addition to that. So that's worked for me.
I think that's great, just to be very intentional about it. Just say, hey, I'm going to post, because otherwise I forget to post about my own stuff. It's off my radar once I've written it and I'm done with it. But I'm like, oh, people are just now finding out about it. I've been working on it for a year, but
Yeah.
one post about it is not enough. You really need at least 7 times to touch anybody before they buy something. This is just a rule of thumb in any kind of sales. 7 touches before someone actually commits to buying something. And so you have to really be intentional about it and be willing to promote yourself and continue to promote yourself. And Mary, anyway, I think, Mary, you're good about it. And I appreciate knowing that you put a reminder on your phone, because that's probably what I need to do, just to remind myself, oh, I should let people know about my book again.
Yeah, well, and if I'm not ready, or if I'm right in the middle of something else, I might ignore that. But for the most part, I try to do that. And then, including hashtags. I know it used to be initially hashtags were a funny way to say, hashtag my geriatric dog is annoying, or, kind of some hidden messages, but they really are unique, like to say authors of Instagram or authors of Facebook, or am writing or writing community. So we really do want to use hashtags to attract people. There's a lot of very, very aggressive readers out there. And I feel like, do you have a life? Like that's all you do is read, books and books and books. And so they're out there, and you use hashtags to kind of find them too, or inspirational story. So that's one way to search, and then include that in your post about burning the pizza because you didn't want to stop writing your scene yesterday. So, but yeah, just to try to keep those relevant and relatively short. I'm not so great about that, but sometimes they talk, like with Twitter, no more than 2, but can get a little carried away with some of the other sites as
Mary?
well. So, yeah.
This is Michelle.
Yeah.
If you covered this already, I'm sorry, but do you do all your posts through your personal page? Because I know if it's business related, they always suggest that you create a business page and use that separate. And so I'm just curious, do you post through your personal page?
I do through personal. I know with Instagram, I can create a business profile. It's really just a matter of money, and that's why I don't do it. Okay. I do have a Mary's Reader Cheerleaders Facebook group that I also have as well, and need to be more active on that. But again, I'm sensitive to my time, but also, and that's a really great way to connect with people. But we are information saturated, so I'm trying to maybe do that every other month or quarterly as well, to kind of step in and say, hey, how are we doing? Anyway, so, but the business profile, I know with Instagram is just a matter of just.
Well, I've hesitated just because it's one more thing to manage.
Yeah. And so I don't know that you need to do that, and I haven't tried it to say whether it's made any difference, but
okay.
I tend to, as a user of Instagram, I will tend to kind of skip past. I feel like, hey, I'm watching something about people's lives, and I feel like there's a commercial all of a sudden in my face. So maybe that's subconsciously part of the reason too why I hesitate. I wouldn't discourage it, but just you kind of have to determine, whether or not that's really helpful or not. So,
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, you'd also talked about personal networking. I don't know if you're going to go into that or not, and I will need to probably sign off here in about 5 or 10 minutes or so.
Okay.
For one thing, Dottie is scratching at the door of my dog, but just again, remembering that these are people, and it's easy to look at an individual and put like oh, that's a potential sale. I was in Houston back in June taking care of my dad for a week, and I snuck away one evening and met together with some friends from high school. Anyway, but I got a book sale out of that I wasn't trying to when I got back home, and it was my day to post something, and this individual that is a sister in Christ, come to find out, was saying she wanted the book. So I just feel like just the interaction and asking about the hardship she was going through with a dying grandmother resulted in a book sale. So not to discredit that. And the lady up at Speedway, when I get my 44-ounce Coke Zero every couple days to kind of get out of my writer's cave and think, that was a book sale. And so just thinking, if as you have said with Nicholas, one life, do the best you can with that one life. And if God chooses to bless with huge, large numbers and great sales, that's ultimately to him. And we do need to be responsible, and we do need to be out there. So there's just a balance between the creative time and creating material, and then finding the people out there that need it or will benefit from it.
That's great. Thanks, Mary. And I'm just going to show a screen here, both of Mary's website and Kent's website. We've talked about a lot of things here, and you might be
Don't show mine, it's
overwhelmed.
terrible.
Yeah.
No,
It really is.
no, I just want to show, just because I think it's important to have a website, to have a place where people can
Yeah.
sign up for your stuff, and to have a way to subscribe. So this is Mary's.
Mhm.
MaryFelkins.com.
Whoa.
But I clicked on Mary's Musings, and it says here on the right, you can enjoy an article that she wrote from Refresh Magazine. But to receive Mary Musings story style devos and quarterly newsletter, subscribe here. And you just type your name in and click subscribe. So this is something that you would put on your website, and you have people sign up for your list. It could be as simple as this little button here would just send you an email, and you just add them to a list. And if you have 12 or 24 people, you can just send a note to them every few weeks with something that you've written or something new. But Mary, I don't know what company. Do you use a company to manage your email list, or do you do it just yourself?
I use MailChimp. It's still the free version. I had a web designer several years ago that created the website,
Okay.
and that's what we chose. There's a lot that I might want to go in there and change up about it, but it's functioned for that purpose, for easy subscription and signing
So
up.
I didn't know what you use, but I'm just going to go to mailchimp.com just so you can see it. This is one of those email companies, and you can sign up for a free. If you click pricing here, it tells you how many people can subscribe, and they'll give you the button and the code to put on your website. But for free, you can start for free, and you get a certain number of emails that you can send to. For $10 a month, you can send to a few more people. For $14 a month, $14.99, you can send to a few more people. Or you can go to 300 and just do everything and send to tens of thousands. But these are people that they're not selling you a list of people. These are your own people that sign up on your website. But they'll give you the code. MailChimp is one of these companies.
There's a lot.
Aweber.com is one that I've used. It's Kent, I think you use ConvertKit. Is that true?
ConvertKit.
Correct.
ConvertKit.com.
Heard a lot of good things about that.
They have plans, look, 0 or start for free. So that's a pretty good.
ConvertKit actually right now they have a really killer thing going on where I think it's up to 1,000 subscribers you can have for free.
That's what it says here.
Right.
Manage 1,000 email
Yeah, I mean-
subscribers. So that's a lot of people that you could reach
It's really,
That's
really good.
really good.
for free. I'm currently using a company called CampaignMonitor.com, and they have their pricing here is you can move the thing, but it's like $9 a month for 2,500 emails, or $30 a month. And I will tell you, just behind the scenes for my mailing list, where I reach 20,000 people, That costs me $170 a month. So
Mhm.
that's, that's not where you want to start probably, but over the years, that's an expense that's worth it to me to
Mhm.
reach 20,000 people in now over 200 countries. And so,
Mhm.
uh, but it's a ministry for me. It's
Right.
way cheaper than doing a TV broadcast every week. It's way
Mhm.
cheaper than, and I couldn't do it. I couldn't get on TV. I couldn't get on radio, but I can get on the internet. So you can go anywhere from free with these companies.
Mhm.
Constant Contact is another one.
Right.
ConstantContact.com, and they have various pricing here too. But you'll
Mhm.
get an idea. But you can start with a list of 100 people or 500 people or 1,000 people, and
Mhm.
uh, you can do that. Kent Sanders, let's go to his website. He's got a splash screen here that says sign up.
Is this a no judgment zone?
No
Yes.
judgments on it.
I hope so.
Yes.
But over here at the right, you can just enter your name and your email address. Get it now.
That's
Here's
Yeah.
my own website as well, the ranch, and I just have a thing over here at the left. Let's keep in touch. So I have that button on every page of my website. It doesn't matter where you go. It's over here at the left. Let's keep in
Mhm.
touch. Subscribe here.
Hi, Eric. Actually, I have a question
Aaron,
for
yes.
the fiction writers. I know we've kind of talked about how to engage with your audience, but for those who may be writing their first book, does anyone who does fiction have any advice about how to craft the story kind of for an audience when you don't actually know who that audience is?
Well, one of the questions that you need to answer is who is your audience? So that might be a place to start. Honestly, that's one of the things that I kind of think, well, I guess I tend to write for women aged, say, 18 to 65. And you may I really think it is important, though, to consider picture somebody with your book in hand. What do they look like? So, because that'll affect kind of how you're writing too. Whether it's for YA, do you picture young kids or men or women or so? Yeah, and it might be someone just like you. So you write what you enjoy reading. So yeah,
Okay, thank you.
I don't know if that's helpful or not, but it is good to have. And I need to remember that too. Who is my audience? So it's something you need to establish and then be reminded of that.
Okay, thanks. And I know you said you kind of did some blocking for one of the other sessions. Does that ever affect like how you structure your story in any way, or do you kind of just kind of know who it is and you can kind of just visualize the whole thing?
For plotting, is that what you're talking about?
Yeah,
Or,
yeah, for plotting.
yeah, I start with the character in mind. Actually, start with a picture of the character, and then I create what's called a story equation. It's complicated, but just their whole backstory. And from that, there's a wound, a lie, and a fear, so that I know as much as I can possibly know about them when they show up on the page. And then I create an outline for a plot, but I do a whole lot of this in the process. And that's where the spirit takes over. And all of a sudden I think, oh, now their characters are having an argument that I didn't see coming. Or so that's where you really have to trust God in the process. So there are people that either choose to write by the seat of their pants or they choose to be plotters, and I'm both. So I have a structure and a kind of a roadmap, but I might pull over and get something on the side of the road, so to speak, as I'm writing, and really trying to allow the character to emerge. And the more you interact with them, the more they tell you where they want to go and what they need to do and what they need to learn, so that the lie they believe comes to a place of transformation to the truth. So I'm talking about specifically inspirational writing, Christian writing, which I assume that you'll have a spiritual message in whatever genre, whether it's time travel or mystery. There needs to be some character transformation and emotional connection. So, but that starts with getting to know them really, really well. Some writers will spend however long, sometimes months, really, truly just getting to know the character and interviewing them and say, okay, what's bothering you? What's the problem? Well, why and why and why, and drill down and drill down. Like, if you've ever been to a counselor, you know how that works. And then you're ready to start their story. So
And Aaron, one other thought too. I know like this Christopher Paolini, who's an author who wrote Aragon and a number of these fictional things. He would just go to libraries and he would read from his books, and he would have read public readings, and he'd announce them and say, "I'll be at this library and I'm going to read." And that's where he found a lot of his readers, just by actually reading the books to
Mhm.
people, reading from the chapters, having them buy the book or check out the book. And he did that. I mean, he was, I don't know, maybe 14, 15 years old when he wrote his first book, and he started just going to libraries and reading, and he found his audience because the people that
Mhm.
wanted to hear about this fantasy world, and then they turn it into a major motion picture, and he's, he sold gabillions of books, but it really is that personal network. Just, Mary's done this. She's gone to do readings of her, romance novels to church women's groups or to community clubs. I think, Mary, I don't exactly remember, but sometimes just by doing readings and getting, getting that real life feedback from someone who cares about your story. Like when you emailed me some things and we talked and we'd get together and talk about the characters, just having a real person have feedback, and all of a sudden you're like, oh, so it can be as simple as that. I say simple. It's not simple to like do a reading at a library, but there are things that you can do that would
Mhm.
help identify your reader, and then you know better what they look like because they're right there.
Mhm.
Okay. Thank you.
That's good.
Or you could do a YouTube channel like I was talking about earlier for my stuff. I just did, I just start reading some of my stories and see who watches, see who shows up. Send it to your friends, send it to, or young adults or whoever you think your target is.
Mhm.
But yeah, it's a lot of it's just you're just going out there trying to find your audience. So,
I'm gonna have to hop
Thank you.
off here.
Mary,
Sorry.
thanks so much. If you want to connect with Mary, maryfelkins.com, and you can sign up for her Mary's Musings, or you have a Facebook group, your cheerleader group. What's that called if they
Yeah,
search?
Mary's Reader Cheerleaders.
Mary's Reader Cheerleaders.
Mhm.
And
That was just inspired by the book launch. I came up with
okay.
um, well, just a way to interact. I know that a lot of readers just really like to get to know the author and vice versa, and that's
Oh, I
a
see.
way to. I'll have a great
I'm
evening.
leaving
All
too.
right.
Thank you.
Kent,
Good to
or
see you, Eric.
Clates.
Bye bye.
We'll all
Bye.
say everybody say happy birthday early to Clates. Happy
Happy
birthday
birthday.
to you. All right.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Kent, Clates. And Kent, if people want to connect with you, what's the best way?
They can email me, kent@kentsanders.net, or you can look me up on Facebook. There's not many people with my name, so.
Kent Sanders. And
Well, that's actually not true. There is a guy. Okay, now you've like hit a nerve. So there's a guy with my name who's owned kentsanders.com for years, and he won't sell it to me. He also has kentsanders@gmail.com. So
don't
clearly
use
this
that.
is a point of pain psychologically for me. I probably should go to therapy, but
I'm sorry, Kent. But
that's all beside the point.
thanks for sharing your thoughts. And if you have podcasting questions for Kent, he's got a lot of podcasts under his belt. I think you're on episode like 160. I don't know what.
180 something. I don't know
180.
what,
So
I have to
I'm
look it up.
behind. I listened to a lot of them, but I haven't gotten into the 180s yet. So. Well, that's the wrap on our first hour here. And if people need to take off, that's okay. But I'm glad to stick around for a while. If you have questions about your own book or questions about anything we've talked about tonight, or I'm just glad to hear what's going on in your world, and we can chat about that. Open forum here. Melanie.
Since I'm getting closer and closer to launching, and if there's one thing in particular you would want me to know, what would that be? It either come from you, Kent, or come from you, Eric.
The number one thing that I keep trying to remember is that everybody's number one emotional need is to be loved and affirmed, and they want to feel important. Even people who seem to be highly successful and who seem to have it all, they still want affirmation. They still want to know that they matter. They still want those words of encouragement. And that's a totally universal thing. So I think anything we can do whenever we're putting something out into the world is really think through carefully how that benefits other people. Because, I mean, at our core, all of us want to know that we matter. That's like the thing that we will go to great lengths to get is other people's validation and their affirmation. So anytime we can make people feel loved, we can make them feel accepted, we can make them feel good about themselves, and help and present what we're doing in a way that they know it benefits them, I think that's a really good thing. So that's why I think marketing is like, if we do marketing right, that's our gift to the world. Because if we really have something that we think is going to entertain people or help them in some way, maybe it's going to help them fix their marriage or make money or care for their family or whatever it is that we're doing, that's like a gift to them. So I don't know. I like to think of things kind of in that realm. I'm not a good marketer. I'm not a good salesperson. I don't think I'm a very good business person. But what I can do is I'm pretty good with relationships, and I can make people feel good. And that, I think, can compensate for a lot of inadequacies with all this book stuff and business stuff. So if you can really think through how is what you're doing making people's lives better, how does this make them feel good, how does it benefit them, that I think goes a really, really long way. And that's incidentally why I give away a lot of books. Like, one of my favorite things is I love to send books to people. And what I do, this is going to sound really cheesy, I get that, but it's kind of my thing. So I just have thank you cards. I've got thank you cards right here. And like, whenever I have a podcast guest, many times I will send them a copy of my last book in the mail, and I'll put a card in there. And I have these, I'm not even sure if this is relevant to what you asked me, but
You're doing great.
But I'm going here anyway. Because I talk a lot about creativity, and I think the creative process is really vital no matter what it is that you do. I have these keys that I get from Amazon. They're these little cheap skeleton keys like this. These are like a couple inches long. So I write out a note, and this is just like a thank you card, and I tape the key in here. And so I'll write out my note, hey, thanks for being a guest on the podcast and adding value, blah, 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 whatever else that I want to say. But then at the top, I'll just do a quick PS. Thanks for taking the time to help unlock our creative potential. We're helping to unlock other people's creative potential, something like that. And just that little card and that little key, you would be amazed at how many people go nuts over that kind of stuff. It seems a little bit juvenile, and like you're sending this little trinket, but people love trinkets. Like, I have to get those in the mail. So I don't know. I think any personal touches you can put on book launches or sending gifts or anything at all. Like, part of this is going to sound really silly, but something that I really love to do along with my podcast is when I have a guest, I love to be able to have an excuse for sending them a handwritten card in the mail, because I really, really enjoy doing that. So any excuse that I can have to give people a personal touch, that to me is just a lot of fun. So if you can find ways to incorporate those kinds of things into your book launch, sending people books, sending them cards, stuff that just makes them feel affirmed and validated and somebody noticed them, I think that really goes a long way.
That's valuable. That's
And
very valuable.
I see a note here on the side. Tanya says, Kent, that's so helpful to think of marketing in those terms, helping people, giving to people, rather than just trying to sell books. So I think that's a big mindset shift for,
It is.
if you're saying, hey, because you've just accomplished a huge feat, Melanie, finishing your whole memoir and writing about
Absolutely.
your own personal life. And you want to say, hey, my new book's out. You can come read all about me, 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 me. But really, the reason you wrote it was it's about them, 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 them. So you just have to make sure that comes across. It says, I wrote this for you because I know that you want to feel loved, and by sharing my story, it's called Loved I Am, and by sharing that story with you, I hope that you'll feel loved too, So I think that's brilliant, Kent, and it's the truth, and that's why we pour our lives into this. My one comment, Melanie, would be just to know who you want to send this to. Get an email list if you already have one. If you don't, I don't know if you have a website yet, but you can create a free one at wordpress.com. You can, you probably already do, but make sure there's some kind of sign up, some kind of way that they can click a button and get on your list, because that list is going to be your launching platform. And next month, we're going to talk all about launching your book, what to do for a launch, how to launch, how to make it an event, what do you do when you're ready to then finally launch it. And but I would say, you just need to know how you're going to contact your people. How are you going to, finding your people, and then how are you going to, is it going to be on Facebook post, Instagram, Are you going to do it like Mary does and set a reminder for the next 12 months, and once a month you're going to make sure you're going to put something on Facebook and say, I need to do that for my books.
That was great. That was a great idea.
I write a book every year and I announce it once and I'm done. I go write another one, and I need to keep it in front of people and say, oh, there's this book and there's this book and there's this book, and it'll help you in this way. I'll add Kent's in there too. I think
So
even,
something else.
go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry, I interrupted.
I was going to say for Aaron too, for your books, I think, it's entertainment, or it's, what adventure, or it's escapism, or it doesn't have to be a devotional that says, here's how your marriage is going to be better, but it could be definitely, you're giving them something. You're giving them something enjoyable, fun, release, explore. Yeah, whatever you got out of your Saturday morning cartoons, that's what you're offering to people,
I was just going to mention that I don't do all this perfectly. So if I'm giving the impression like I have all this figured out, I honestly don't. But I have these 2 or 3 little things that I use a lot, and they seem to work pretty well. One thing that I always try to think of is, if I want to promote something, how do I bring somebody else into that mix so that it's not just me saying, hey, listen to my podcast, read my book, check out my whatever it is that I'm promoting. So something that I might do, Melanie, this is just one, I don't know if this would actually apply a lot to your situation, but I think if I were launching like a biography or memoir type of a thing, you could promote it, but you could do it in a way where you're highlighting somebody else, but you're mentioning your book as kind of an aside. For example, you could do a short Facebook post about your book, but then really put the focus on somebody else who gave you the courage, or they gave you the enthusiasm, or they somehow helped you to create that book. I mean, even though you're the author of it, there's dozens of people who really had a part. They really played a part in helping you to do that, because the book is never ever a solo effort, really. So you could say something like, hey, I just wanted to, you could even make this into a fun series. Hey, I'm doing this two-week book launch window, and I don't know what your book launch window is, but for 2 weeks, I want to highlight one person each day who's really helped me and played a part in me being able to tell my story. And then you can include a short story about them. So if I was doing it, I wanted to highlight Eric, I would say, man, Eric's been a great friend for however many, 7 or 8 decades it must have been by now. We've been friends for so long.
Close.
Eric has been such a great friend, and he helped me in these 2 or 3 specific ways. He really encouraged me, and I would not have been able to do this without his encouragement and his support. So I just wanted to say thanks to Eric, and if you want to check out my book, here's a link. Or you can even not put in a link. People will search for it if they want to. But to me, that's a way of, you're promoting it without promoting it. You're promoting it, but only as an aside to really you're promoting somebody else. And
if you do it on Facebook or one of those social media,
yeah, totally.
You tag the person, and it goes to all their people too. So if I tagged Kent and said, hey, Kent really helped me with this book, Kent Sanders, then all his people see that I've got a book too, because I tagged him. And yeah, there's a lot of, there's so many subtle things you could do, but that's a great point too.
I think people, sometimes we think, maybe it's just me, sometimes I have the impression that people will think less of me if I give everybody else the credit. But the truth is that they actually think more of me, because then everybody knows none of us does anything significant by ourselves. We all know that. But whenever we see somebody give other people the credit, then we're like, hey, that's pretty cool. It makes us feel good. It makes those people feel good. I think it's more truthful in how things actually are. So I think as much as we can give other people the credit, that's even better.
Very helpful. Thank you.
And I want to thank you so much, because I've really struggled with that whole marketing piece. I'm like you. I like selling stuff. It just really turns me off. And that just kind of really changes the whole mindset. I'm helping people, which I love helping people. I hate selling, but helping people I can relate to. That's so helpful.
Well, and to be totally honest with you, that's one of the reasons why I really like ghostwriting, is because I get to combine my love of writing and some skills with that with really kind of a pastoral sensibility. Like, I've been really surprised how much ghostwriting is kind of like being a counselor and a pastor sometimes, because you're drawing people's stories out of them. you're serving them in a really deep way. And I don't know, for me, I'm like, hey, I'm never going to sell you a million books probably, but I can serve that one client really, really well and make them feel really good and help them in a super deep way. So I think part of this whole thing is figuring out what you do best and how you like to market best and where your comfort level and skill set is, and finding out how you can have success within those parameters and not try to be somebody that you're not. Like, I am not a super duper, like, on stage, I'm going to be like the awesome coach. I'm going to go speak at all these big workshops and all these stages, and maybe that'll happen someday, but that's just not really me. I'm pretty low key. So I've tried to find the pathway that works for how I'm wired.
Other thoughts or questions? Ashley, we didn't get to hear about your project. Are you involved in a project, or you said you're writing and you got
Well, I
some
really
music?
enjoyed reading Kent's book, and when I say reading, since I'm a musician, I don't know if you musicians are like that. Usually I'm listening to it on audiobook, and as you see, I have small children running around. But I loved how he was encouraging, I feel like what was it, the monster and the muse that you're fighting? What was it you said, Kent, or something? And that's totally me. Like, every day I feel like I have to battle that, because there's a part of me that feels like I'm supposed to write, and then there's the monster that's saying this is a waste of my time, I have better things to be doing. That's something I definitely struggle with, probably daily. But yeah, I'm trying to kind of reach especially the music world right now, with I'm calling it music fiction, and so writing my stories, but I'm putting in musical references and trying to make it to where people can find, oh, this song. And so my novel has like characters with different genres. It's especially classical, but it has some other ones. And now I'm doing some short stories as kind of market, pre book marketing, and then I'm doing some nonfiction music blogging too. And kind of like you were saying, I'm trying to interview other people for my blog, so that it's not just me. Here's what I'm doing, because no one really wants to read that. And so I've got to find some really fascinating other people to interview. Now the tricky thing is I'm trying to get into. I was going to pick your brains about YouTube versus podcast versus do you need both? I do have, Kent knows I have a YouTube channel, and I'm starting to try to do a few interviews that I could put up on YouTube. And I've debated if I need to have a podcast too, or just the one. And I know you guys have kind of dabbled in both, so I don't know, what's kind of your take on YouTube versus podcasting? Or Kent, I see you have both. How did you kind of decide to do both?
Well, I can speak to that in a minute as to how I chose podcasting. But first, Ashley's being a little bit too modest, so her stuff is really, really good, by the way. So if you just search for her name on Amazon, and I think you also have these on your YouTube channel. So she has these really incredible short stories, and the audio versions of those are really, really good. Like, they're really well produced. It is really easy to have bad audiobooks, but they sound fantastic.
That means a lot.
Yeah, they really sound fantastic. What I think is really cool is, and obviously I'm probably mangling this whole description, but Ashley's taken her field, which is music, specifically, violin, and has crafted some short stories around those, which I think is such a cool thing to do, because it's like you already know that field. So now you've produced these assets, these books, based on that, which is really cool. So that's actually inspired me to think about, man, I need to write some short stories as well.
Yeah, you guys are both musicians, so you can do some with music fiction too.
So yeah, everybody should go check those out.
With your music theater, I'm like, oh, I need to check out your music theater stuff. Thanks.
Yeah, I love your thought of just music fiction. I just, that's such an interesting category, and my sons.
I made it up, but join it. Add more to it.
I think it's great, and my sons watch a lot of anime, and in a lot of anime, they expose them to a lot of piano music, violin music, and so they'll go get these pieces that they've seen in an anime show, and they'll start learning how to play these pieces, and they follow all these YouTubers that play the anime songs, and so I never really thought of that as a category, but that makes sense that you could make that.
Well, it's not an official category, so that's where I still have to figure out, like, okay, what's my actual category?
I think it's perfect. I think it's beautiful.
Probably some kind of Christian romance or something, but we need more in other categories too. I was like, oh, and I guess my goal of helping people would be, I'm a violin teacher by trade, so I want to continue to promote music and music education and kids, growing up with it, and then also to encourage people who've already been in the field, So I guess that's kind of my audience. But the hard thing I think I'm trying to figure out is there's the, Christian, side, and then there's the audience members that would definitely not be Christian. And my editor is Christian. And I was like, well, do you think I need to go more general or more Christian? She read it and she's like, it definitely reads Christian. And so just go ahead and own that. And then if non-Christians read it, just as long as they know. I don't know if you guys can speak to that side of it too. Like, I'd hate to take out the Christian elements if that's who I am, But
Mary Felkins is great on that too, because she's definitely taken a path that's is inspirational fiction. She calls it. It's not a.
Is that different than Christian or?
Yeah, I mean it's a code word for Christian, but it's inspirational.
Right. And so maybe if I say that as inspirational.
Yeah, inspirational romance or inspirational fiction, and then it her books are not Bible thumping, but they definitely have good.
I don't want it to be Bible thumping. That would turn away my
They have good worldview. Yeah, so I think Mary Felkins walks that well, and Debbie Maycomer.
I need to look at her now. I'm like, I need to look at her stuff. Yeah.
Debbie Maycomer. I don't know if you've ever read her. She's this Harlequin romance, Macomber, but she's a New York Times best-selling author.
Nice.
I mean, has been for years. But hers always have a Christian worldview. There's a message. She tries to minister to people, but she sells under Harlequin romance, And so she,
right. So I mean,
But she has a great, it's not Christian fiction, but but it is inspirational fiction, and so I think that can be a nice category to be in.
Because we want to be able to still reach the non-Christians, but then I also don't want to have to compromise. If this is, my characters are Christian, or at least my leads, and so that is part of who they are.
If you'll check out my podcast on ericelder.com and look for Mary Felkins' interview, and we talk
I'll definitely check that out.
We talk about that whole genre, what she chose. You also asked about the YouTube versus podcasting, and Kent does all the audio podcasting.
Both. I was gonna say he does both.
But I do YouTube, and here's why I chose YouTube. And I've talked to Kent about, because I'd like to market it and put it as audio podcast too, but I put a lot of music in mine. And my goal for podcasting is to get streams of my songs, because I get paid way more royalties on music than I do on my books. And so so the algorithms on YouTube, if you put out something like every week or every day, and you're even playing your songs in the background while you're doing a cooking show.
Are you a composer too then? Are you writing your own songs too?
Even if you do, do covers, as long as you register them with someone like CD Baby or DistroKid or something, as long as they're registered, you get credit for that song. So my sister and I, we do a lot of piano music. She does a lot of 120 different covers or up on all those platforms. But every time it streams, we get royalties. And so one of my goals is to always try to include some music in my show. And I haven't quite cracked that nut how to do it on an audio podcast, because I don't have all the rights to all the songs that I do, And so if I stream it on iTunes or whatever, in a podcast, I'm not sure I'm allowed to do it. But if I do a YouTube channel, they have it all worked out, and content matches, so it'll recognize if it's my song that I play or if it's somebody else's, and it'll give somebody else credit. So I play my songs, sometimes I play other people's songs, but it sends them a fraction of a penny every time a song plays, but I also get a fraction of a penny every time one of my songs plays. So
yours,
so the reason I started this year was just I thought, I'm going to really go for a YouTube podcast, and I'm going to try to play a song on as many shows as I can. And just see if I can generate interest in my own songs plus other people's songs, and make it just one of the three, because it's also a way to minister to people, so it's not just money making, but I'm trying to see, is there a way I could, so that's what I'm trying to do. But Kent definitely has the audio thing down, and he's there's a lot of pros to the audio. I wish I could just do the audio.
Do you think that the audience is the same on YouTube and podcast, or do you think it is a different, like, listener or viewership or whatever, Kent?
Oh, they're different. I think they're
very different. Yeah,
they're radically different. Typically, and I'm greatly generalizing here, but if I'm recalling my stats right, the typical podcast listener is tends to be a more affluent person who, like an upper middle class type of person. I forget what like the income stats are on that, but it's a person who's pretty much into self-development. They consume a lot of podcasts. They love audio, that kind of thing.
That'd be me.
Yeah. So and I do too.
Like, yeah.
So
my
the
husband
reason
is huge on the YouTube, and he's a
Yeah.
YouTuber. You know. So, yeah.
So the reason
As
I
an
don't. Oh, go
auditory
ahead.
person, yeah. Oh, I was just gonna say, as an auditory person, my natural bent is the audio, and because I'm usually multitasking, but I can also put YouTube on and use it as audio while I'm multitasking or whatever. But yeah, I was curious if they would overlap readerships or if you kind of need some of both. Yeah, go ahead.
Well, I'm sure they do overlap somewhat.
And Kent's one of the few people that I know, but probably a lot of other people, but he rips the audio out of YouTube videos so he can listen to it in his car or as he's doing other things.
I do it all the time.
He takes the YouTube videos. He has some program that he just rips the audio out and then
nice.
So I'm like, wow, he was really an auditory
You
guy.
really have the you're really the audio first. Like,
well, what I do, I'm not entirely sure this is legal. I
oh,
think
never mind. Maybe I'll edit this out of the show.
But anytime that I sign up for a lot of webinars, that kind of stuff, and even ones that I buy. Like, for example, recently I bought one by Donald Miller. He's like a marketing guy who's written a bunch of books.
Was he also
it was a writing
Blue Like Jazz or no?
Yeah, he wrote Blue Like Jazz. He does
that brought one of my friends to the Lord.
Now.
Yeah.
So he sold a several-hour writing workshop that he did recently, and I signed up for it and I paid for it all. I did everything I was supposed to do. But then they send you a video. Well, I don't want to sit and watch a 5-hour video because it's mostly him just like talking.
Right.
So what I do is you have to. It took me a while to figure this out, but you can like go to. I forget what it's called. You can look at all the HTML of a web page. Eric knows more about this stuff than I do. Anyway, you can find, usually those things are through Vimeo and not on YouTube. You find what the actual Vimeo thing is, then you can, there's a couple of websites you can go to like strip out the audio from those videos.
Okay.
And then I just upload those to my phone and then I can just listen to those like a podcast.
I'll just say Kent's very serious about audio.
It's very
anal
retentive.
Well, I love the audio. I mean, when you're trying to really, kind of like you and I talked in the email a little bit. Is your main goal literally readers or is it listeners? You know, when you're trying to script your books or your product, and how does that kind of shape what you're looking for a little bit?
Well, for me, the podcast serves a couple different functions. One is that my business right now, where the bulk of my side hustle income comes from, is through ghostwriting. So for me, the podcast is a way to build relationships and establish connections, establish myself as someone who's connected with other people of influence, other authors, that kind of thing. So for me, the podcast very much helps me to develop connections and relationships and so forth. But the reason that I also do solo episodes is because I want to help establish myself as an authority on business writing. Now, whether I actually am is completely debatable. That's really beside the point. But,
no feeding the monster.
It's well, and
you are
there is absolutely an element to this whole book thing where a lot of it is just marketing. Where if you put out a good book and you say I'm an authority on blah 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 topic, people are going to believe that because there's an element where if you say you're an authority on something, you have credibility or you're the expert, and you have a podcast or you have a book, you have credibility enhancing content to back that up, people are going to believe it. I'm not saying they shouldn't believe it, but I'm saying that's just part of the game of being an author. Is how you frame yourself and how you market yourself. So that's the reason I do a podcast, is to help build my credibility within the business writing space.
Right.
And don't get me wrong, I work really hard at the content and it's very time consuming and all that stuff. But I do a podcast because I just don't want to mess with video. I don't like the hassle of video. I don't like worrying about the lighting and all the camera angles and all that jazz.
That part's
Eric's
hard.
really good with that stuff. I have zero interest in messing with it, but that's just me. I'm an audio person.
Yeah.
And you guys can keep talking, but I need to run because I'm going to drive home now after this. I've got another podcast that I'm going to do at 10 o'clock. You can log on at ericelder.com, and I'm going to read tonight. And I'm going to play a song from my new show. His name is Nicholas. It's the 3 young characters. They're going to sing Oranges and Lemons and Limes. Oh my.
Nice.
Can I catch you for
I'm going to have to look up your show.
Can I catch you for one thing, or do I need
Yes,
to?
Michelle. Yeah. No. Yeah. One more minute.
So you mentioned asking people for donations to your ministry and that it's not tax deductible. I've been struggling because I come from the corporate world and now I'm launching into ministry, but I have people saying, well, are you trying to earn income? Is it not a ministry if you're trying to earn? And so I'm just like really confused about that whole context, because my first business card said Journey to Your Legacy Ministries. And I had some people tell me not to put that if I was wanting to earn an income. So do you have anything to say on that?
And if I confused you, sorry, people do get a tax donation or a tax deduction if they donate to my ministry.
Oh, okay.
But I'm saying that even if you don't have a ministry, I know people that run mailing lists and things and do other things, and they'll say, hey, if you want to send and support this work, we're doing some great work here. We're reaching a lot of people. It doesn't have to be ministry, but I've encouraged Kent to do this on his show. I don't think he's taken me up yet, but to say, hey, I'm doing this podcast every week for free for you, and I've done 180 episodes, and I love doing it. But if you want to support this, hey, send $25. You don't get a tax break for it, but I know you don't do it for the tax break. You do it because you love the content. So I was just saying you can pitch it in a different way that would say, hey, send me $25 a month. I'd love that. And that you could be, that's Patreon or something you could send them to, but I was just,
Do you guys use Patreon?
I don't think. Do you use Patreon?
No.
No, but I think he should. I think he should start.
I'm starting to try to look in. I set mine up.
Or
last
if it's
night
not
to try to get
Patreon,
it
but
going.
something. Just even have a link that says, hey, help support our work, and you don't have to be a tax. Most people that donate to me don't actually take the deduction anyway, because the deductions they're not helpful anymore these days. You have to give so many tens of thousands of dollars to get a deduction that's helpful.
Right.
But I don't know, Michelle. I think you can. I think you can call it a ministry. You can call it a business. You can call it whatever. But I think Kent's point earlier is, you're helping people. So whatever way you can help them in their life, whether it's personal life coaching or I think you just call it what you think it's doing for them.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. Father, thank you for this wonderful time, and thanks for this great, rich discussion. And God, I just pray that you continue to bless each of our projects, Lord, and I pray that you would help the people that are doing this, and I pray, God, they'd get their books out and lots of people would be touched and blessed in Jesus' name. Amen. All right, we'll see you in a bit.
Take care.
All right.
Uh-huh.